Welcome to A Bevy of Bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club. My name's Noddy, and as always, I'm joined by Stevo. And in this episode number 6, we're going to talk about the game just played against the Bombers, a few topics in the AFL, and the game ahead against the Giants. So to all the signets of the world out there, fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a very biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. G'day, Stevo. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, mate. Going well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. My heart's finally stopped racing, so doing a bit better than I was on Thursday night. But well, with that in mind, maybe we should get into why my heart was racing in the first place, shall we? So first up, let's look at how our Swannies did in round 4. In our very first Thursday game of the year, we came up against the 10th place Essendon Bombers in a very thrilling and often extremely stressful game filled with missed opportunities and massive pressure applied by both sides. The Bloods held on to eclipse the Bombers in a hard-fought and gritty victory, scoring 11-17-83 to Essendon's 12-8-80. All right, Stevo, first impressions, what did you think?
Oh, mate, like you said, stressful. Regular listeners know that I live in Finland, and so we've got a time lag. So often I can't be watching the games live or at regular sorts of times. And this one was on in the middle of the working day on a Thursday, and I was in a meeting, like a Zoom meeting at the time. I had the game on my phone, and I had to turn it off. It was too much. I couldn't handle it. And then I turned it back on for the last 2 minutes or so. Luckily, my microphone was on mute because my colleagues in the meeting would have seen a different side of me, I think. But they got up. They got the win. So that was exciting. And then I watched the replay once I'd finished work. But yeah, overall, I guess it was a grind, really. If I had to describe the game in a word, a grind, 2 words. But it was good to see them have to win a game in the last quarter as well. I think the last 3 weeks, the games have more or less been over by the end of the third quarter. And I think in this one, the senior players really stood up and led the game when it was on the, or like won the game when the game was on the line. So it was good to see them find that different way to win.
Yeah, look, to be honest, if I were asked which would you prefer, game over by 3 quarters in our favour or grinded out right to the last minute of the game, I think I'd prefer the former just for my stress levels. But yeah, I agree with you, mate. It was sustained pressure throughout. We stayed in the fight and we held on for a very, very good win. And I think the other thing to say here is that I think Essendon will probably knock off a fair few teams this year, especially if they keep playing as they played, which was very similar to how we've been playing. So, all right, first, what did we think of team selection? So what was your reaction to our ins of Franklin, outs McLean and Bell as a medical sub?
I guess Franklin was expected. The Swans had been pretty clear, as early as the Richmond game that he was going to play against Essendon. And it was just because of the short turnaround that they hadn't included him for the earlier game in Melbourne. So, yeah, Franklin in. And then McLean, again, did nothing wrong. And, whenever he's come into the side, he's done really well. And I think he'll get more chances as the year goes on. And then the medical sub, they seem to be rotating it. And Bell looked like he was next in line for the rotation. And he got to come on and have a run once he went off, which was good for him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Franklin looked fresh and hungry. And as you said, McLean will have his chances later on. But yeah, Bell came on for Heaney and actually played his role when it mattered and was in a couple of crunch passages of play. So we'll talk about that later. But all right, what were your main takeaways, your key takeaways for the game?
I guess, first of all, it showed us very clearly that, and we talked about this last week, that, now that the Swans have had 3 good wins in a row, that teams are going to do their homework and they're going to start picking apart the Sydney game and they're going to bring it to us. And Essendon did. They really brought our pressure game up to us and we needed to find a way to respond. Essendon had 36 tackles in the last quarter. Snelling had 7 on his own, but the Swans stood up to it. And Essendon, I mean, they knew that Sydney want to move the ball quickly through the corridor. They want to play this sort of short kick game and move the ball nicely by foot. They didn't make it easy for us to do that. Maybe the small SCG helps a little bit. It is more constricted through the corridor there, perhaps, than some other fields. But Essendon did a really good job of it. They worked us out and they really made us earn the win. But on the other hand, I think we can't be that wasteful against stronger sides. Yes, Essendon played very well. They did do a lot of effort to restrict how Sydney play, but we also were very wasteful with the ball. We kicked 17 behinds or something. I mean, if we'd been more accurate converting, maybe it would have been a different game.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I mean, in the first 3 rounds, we kicked more goals than behinds. but this round we kicked more behinds than goals, obviously. But as you're saying, and it really is a key point of the game, the Bombers just they caused us more pressure, and so that's going to be in the minds of the players, and it's going to have an effect on our accuracy, and that comes to the fore when we look at some of the stats later on. But just very quickly look at the quarter by quarter breakdown. So I think the commentators were saying there were like 8 or 9 lead changes. It really was a seesawing affair, but effectively the Bombers won the first quarter 4-2. Then again, we had a pretty decent second quarter or second half of second quarter, and we ended up winning that 5-3. And then the Bombers won the third 3-2, and then it was a 2-goal all draw to finish off. But we'd obviously done enough to get the 3-point win in the end. So, Steve, can you give us a few stats that highlight what we've been talking about?
I mean, the main one, you look at the stat sheet, like for the team stats, there wasn't huge discrepancies in a lot of the areas, a lot of the key areas. One that there was a big noticeable gap was clearances, which we had 47 to 24, which is massive. It's almost double. It's one clearance ball and you double their number of clearance. But then again, I think the way that Essendon played didn't reflect clearly that number, because that huge dominance in clearances wasn't reflected in overall dominance in the game. And I think it's always good to look at stats in the context of what happens next and how those stats are gathered. So with the clearance in this game, a lot of the time there was very strong pressure on our players. A lot of our clearances were kind of scrappy hack kick forwards like Parker and Kennedy and Hickey, just sort of hacking the ball forward, which is much different to breaking cleanly out of a stoppage and sort of putting it on the chest of a player up the field. And then also in a clearance, you might have a case where there might be pressure on the clearance as you get it forward, or you might be kicking forward to an outnumber. So all these things are important when we look at clearance stats. And I think that we did very well around the clearances. Our inside mids did a great job, but it's never the whole picture.
Yeah, definitely. I'll add a comment on disposal efficiency. So in the first 3 rounds, we were hovering around 75, 76%. And in the game against the Bombers, we were 67%. So again, it just sort of paints that picture that it was a much closer game than it has been. We had less time on the ball. There was more heat coming from the opposition with the tackles. Obviously, you called out Snelling there. I think he ended with like 13 for the game or something. But the Bombers had 78 tackles in total to our 54. So yeah, it just showed that their pressure did have an effect on how we use the ball. The other thing I think we'll both talk about here, Stevo, is that in the first 3 rounds, we had players, I think you and I were talking, we had something like 10 or 11 different goal scorers in the first 3 rounds. So like a lot of people were contributing to us getting these 3 scores over 100 3 weeks in a row and more goals than behinds. And it was the likes of really, up and coming, our brand new, our debutants. So Goulden, McDonald, obviously Campbell hasn't kicked yet. But if we look at the score sheet from the game, Goulden kicked 3 behinds, Heaney kicked 2 behinds, Blakey kicked 2 behinds, and then Warner, Hickey and Wicks all kicked 1 behind each. And Logan McDonald didn't kick neither a goal nor a behind. So all of these players had obviously been contributing in the past 3 weeks, but for them not to score at all. So what are we looking at here, Steve? We've got 10 behinds. And I think you said something about if you include the 2 kicks out on the full by Goulden, we've got 12 gettable scoring shots. So let's err on the side of caution and say we only get 50% of those. So that's an additional 6 goals. So and this is being harsh, but definitely realistic in that they were gettable. So our score goes from 11-17 and actually flips to 17-11, and that total score would be 113 against 12-8-80, presuming that Essendon also stayed on the same points. But that score is more reflective of the first 3 rounds. And the fact that these players didn't score really, I think, added to our pressure because it is mental. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the only one out of that, there's those 10 behinds you mentioned and the 2 out on the full that were both from Goulden. The only one where I'll kind of give a bit of leniency maybe is that one by Heaney where it was right on the boundary, but he kicked a goal from the same spot against Richmond. So, we know he can do it.
Yeah.
And even then, that's, I'm being a bit harsh, maybe expecting him to kick them all the time, but it was a tough kick. But yeah, they're mostly very, very gettable shots. And I think that when Essendon's playing this increased pressure style game, where it's hard, like it's physically and mentally difficult to play that pressure style football all the time. So you've got to run hard to fill space in a zone, you've got to chase, you've got to pressure, you've got to do all of that stuff, and it's much harder to maintain that intensity when you're down by 5 or 6 goals on the scoreboard, not 5 or 6 points. And so mentally it's easier to stay in the game if you're not getting that scoreboard pressure on the opposition.
Yeah, and obviously it was throughout. I mean, I think the Bombers had gotten out to a 25-point lead at one point, and then obviously, as we've already said, sort of Swans came back into it, and then the Bombers came, and then basically it was they led after first quarter, we led after second quarter, they led after third quarter, and then we finally came home with the chocolates. So it really was a seesawing affair, but one that could have been a little bit less stressful had some of these players, and we can't be too harsh on them because a lot of them are very young, but it was just a stark contrast to the first 3 rounds of the year. But hopefully they'll find their radar again, and I mean, if Goulden had kicked all 5, we'd be talking about Gordon kicking 5, so and outscoring Buddy. But so it just goes to show that on any given day, on any given night, and depending on who you're up against, things can not go your way. So, all right, mate, what were your favourite moments of the game?
Well, we're talking about Goulden. I'm going to keep talking about Goulden because and I guess I'll add to that too that he kicked 3 behinds and he kicked 2 out on the full. He also had a couple of great goal assists. But what we really have is we've got an 18, 19. Is he 18 or 19? Is he very young?
I think he's still 18, mate.
Yeah, so like a teenager at least. Very young.
He's the youngest. He's the youngest player on our list.
Okay, yeah. So the youngest guy on our list who is playing in a pressure game on the Thursday night, and he's getting multiple goal assists and he's getting 5 shots on goal. That's pretty good just by that, I think. So he missed, but maybe next week he gets them and it's a different thing, like you said. But Goulden, the thing I really liked with him, because we see a lot of his play. He's a sort of very highlights friendly player, I think, because of the impact that he has. And he did some really good work. It was in the second quarter, 14 minutes to go on the countdown clock in the second quarter. He does some really, really great work in the middle. He forces a turnover that leads to a Florent goal. But the thing that I really liked was what happened after that. He calls the turnover. Swans got the goal. He's in the forward line celebrating. They're getting ready to set up for the next centre bounce. And then you see Brett Kirk, the Swans runner, come on and give him the call to come off. He straight away turns away from his sort of like celebration, getting reset, bolts off the field as fast as he can, like really, really hard running off to get the rotation in before the next bounce. Like that sort of team thing, just to give his teammate that extra couple of seconds to get in and get set up. And that's the sort of thing I love seeing in a player. And it's really exciting to see in a young player like him.
Yeah, mate, he's so exciting. Talking about goal assists, I think he's like averaging 8 or something a game. He might even be right up there in the league leaders. So we'll have to double check that and come back with an accurate comment next week. But have you got any other honourable mentions, mate, or was that your clear winner?
That was great. There was also a really great thing that McInerney did in the last quarter, about 6 minutes left. It was just a really, really smart tap off the ground to Reid when the game was in the balance. He was in a contest. The ball was on the ground. Rather than trying to sort of take possession or whatever, he had the presence of mind. He saw Reid, who was a bit free at the front of the contest, tapped it forward to him. Reid got it to Blakey, who took it forward. They didn't score from it. But the important thing is that McInerney was able to assess that quickly, realised that the other options was either a ball up or even an Essendon possession versus what turned into a Sydney shot on goal. So for another young player to have that presence of mind to do that little 1%er type thing, I really liked.
Well, mate, that's a good segue to my favourite moment because it also involved Juzzy McInerney. I'm going to talk about Buddy's third goal. So the goal that got us ahead by 2 points with about, let's say, 3 minutes to go, I think it was, roughly. So Lloyd kicks it in and we're on the broadcast side, I guess, back end towards the hill, or the old hill rather. So Lloyd kicks into Dawson, who kicks to Blakey, who then kicks on to Mills as a contest. Mills gets it to Joey Kennedy, who handballs back to Mills, who does a beautiful little handball to McInerney, who's screaming down the wing. And I think there's a cutaway to the bench and horses screaming at Charlie Gardner at this point, I think. But anyway, McInerney, he kicks inside 50 and Buddy had beckoned him towards goal, but McInerney sort of put it towards that first 10, 15 metres near the 50-metre arc. And Buddy came back towards or away from goal and took a lovely contested mark, and then went back, obviously lined up and got the kick, and that put us up by 2 points. So that was probably my favourite moment. A couple of other mentions and this is for Chris, who pointed this one out, with about 45 seconds to go in the game, obviously in the fourth quarter as well. Cunningham gets the ball, I think, sort of just towards the back of the centre square, and McDonald Woody goes to tackle him, but Cunningham breaks free. He spins out of it, and he belts it long down the line, and Hickey sprints after it, sort of rolling towards the members stand, and Hickey sprints after it to make it look a little less deliberate than it probably was, but hey, we'll take it. So that was a very good moment, and obviously Rampy's behind, he got that finger on the ball, and you could very clearly hear him say, "I got that, surely." So he didn't say anything naughty this time, nor did he climb any posts. So that was nice. But yeah, they were my moments, mate. I will actually at this point just add one other little at the ground moment. So obviously was at the ground at the game with the group of boys and girls that sit in the O'Reilly rabble, and what happens is when we previously used to sit in the Bradman stand when we'd win, from the very top, we'd get in the stairwell and then sing the song all the way down. It would echo throughout the concrete steps all the way down, and it was a really good way to get the crowd back into it. But obviously in the O'Reilly, we don't have that same stairwell, but what we do have is that really cool tunnel that basically works its way back up towards the exit that comes out of the back of the Sydney Football Stadium. So what we do now is when we win, which has been good so far this year, obviously, we start singing as we hit the tunnel to get the echo going. And so there was about, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 of us screaming at the top of our lungs and sung the team song. And as we were walking up the ramp, I could see that there was a lady towards the left in a Swans flag who had a phone out taking a video. And I went up to her and said, "Oh, did you enjoy the win? Did you like the song?" And she's like, "Yeah, that was great. I just took a video." I was like, "No worries." And we kept walking out together and chatting about how the game went. And when we got outside, she caught up with the rest of her group, and I'm looking at her. She's got a Swans flag on, a scarf on, and the rest of the group are in Bombers colours. And I'm like, what's going on here? So we went to the pub later on, and I got talking to her, and her name was Marita, and she was with her family, a lot of sisters, and they're from Melbourne, but they're actually an old Essendon family. So I was told by Marita and her sisters that their grandfather was I think one of the grandmasters from the Essendon station, so have been, Don's family basically from day dot. And so I was like, "Marita, why are you wearing a Swan scarf if you're clearly an Essendon hardcore?" And she said, "Well, I've got my husband to thank for that." So I married, Marita says, I married a guy named Bob, who are an old South Melbourne family, and they've been married for 48 years. And so lovingly, Marita barracks for the Bloods now. And so I just wanted to say it was fantastic meeting her, and thanks to Bob for bringing someone back into the Bloods fold, and hopefully catch up with that family at our next game at the SCG against the Bombers, and hopefully we can get the win again. But yeah, just wanted to say thank you for chatting, and thank you for telling me a story, and it was a really, really nice moment, and one that can only be had at the ground. So yeah, they were my moments, mate. But you just never know who you're going to meet at the ground. I think that's the thing. I'm not rubbing it in. I guess I'm rubbing it in a little bit here, Stevo. So I know you're abroad. You can't go to the game. Sorry, mate. Here I am saying we're having all this fun at the ground, and we're getting all these wins, and you're over in Finland. Sorry.
Getting up at 5 a.m. to watch a game bleary-eyed is pretty fun. You don't know what you're missing, mate. Really, you should check it out next time.
I'll give it a go next time.
Yeah,
mate. All right,
highly recommended.
Thanks, mate. All right, let's move on to our best and fairest, our ABOB medal. This is where we rate our best 5 players on the ground using 5-4-3-2-1 scoring system, with 5 points being the best. So, Stevo, why don't you kick us off with your top 5?
Okay. Best on ground for me, 5 votes goes to Luke Parker. Fantastic game. 4 votes to Sam Reid, 3 to Mills, 2 to Kennedy, 1 to Tom Hickey.
Awesome, mate. All right. I also gave 5 points to Parker. I gave 4 to Warner, 3 to Reid, 2 to Hickey, and 1 to Buddy Franklin. So we had Parker, Reid, and Hickey the same, and diverged on Mills, Kennedy, Warner, and Franklin. Is that right?
That sounds right.
Sounds about right. All right. Parker, what a great game. Massive.
Yeah, he was
Tell me
awesome.
about him.
He just does everything, doesn't he? Like, he wins the hard ball, he takes tough marks, his disposal is good, he brings players into the game, he hits the scoreboard. I mean, he's just a fantastic footballer, and I think the Essendon game was one of his examples of just how good he is.
He did several bicycle kicks. You know, when he's in the act of getting tackled and somehow flicks it on his boot, and in doing so, he does like this crazy, like Brazilian style bicycle kick or something. It's just, and it's not he does it often, and he's just very, very, he's just awesome, isn't he? He's massive.
Yeah, he's so strong. I mean, he's one of those guys that even if you got him tackled and wrapped up in a stoppage, he's so strong that he can still actually get the ball onto his boot and get an effective possession forward. Most players in that situation, it's probably going to be a ball up or the ball spills out, but he's got that strength through his body that he can still get you not an effective, but certainly a kick forward.
Yeah, definitely. And with a goal, 32 disposals, 7 marks and 6 clearances, he was at the top of the pack. Sam Reid, let's talk about him next. He was instrumental, especially in that last quarter, but like definitely throughout. He was such a presence across the ground. He played very, very well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was everywhere. I mean, he was taking marks. He was working very well in link play. He got forward, got a couple of goals. He pinched it in the ruck to give Hickey a rest. Yeah, one of the best games that he's played for a while, I think.
Yeah, definitely 2-1. And, it's certainly, we really needed him to step up because in the past couple of weeks, I think those other players we spoke about had been kicking goals probably a bit more than Sam Reid. But yeah, he really stepped up and we really needed him against the Bombers. And yeah, definitely. So you gave him 4 and I gave him 3. I gave Warner 4 just for the fact that he just continues to shine. 23 disposals, 4 inside 57 marks, 6 tackles. He's a tackle beast, right? 6 tackles and 6 clearances. Is just the only thing he didn't do this week was kick a goal, which I thought he could have because he screamed out of the centre square a bit like last week. He had Darcy Parish chasing him. I think you were saying that maybe no one had shouted out to him that he had more time. Maybe he didn't think he had as much time he had. But yeah, obviously, he played. He looked for an option selflessly, but I was really hoping he would emulate that passage of play against the Tigers. But our man Hickey, okay, Tom Hickey, wow, could be traded in Player of the Year. He's getting close. We might have to do a little session on that to assess how all the players are going who moved at the end of last year's trade period. But I will absolutely, hand on heart, eat my hat here and say Tom Hickey has proven me wrong, and I'm on board. I'm a fan. I'm on the Hickey train bandwagon. He just keeps doing it, doesn't he? He's fantastic.
Yeah, he was great, and he has such a strong impact around the clearance. I think he led the Swans for clearances again this week. I think he had 8 clearances on his own, so he's our top clearance player again. Yeah, very, very good game.
I mean, the only knock you could say is that he didn't kick any goals, but I think you made a very good point about Nick Cox when he was marking up on him, Stevo.
I think, yeah, probably. I mean, this is just me sort of thinking out loud in a way, but I would guess that if you think of how he's got a lot of his goals in the earlier games, it's when he's been able to sort of just drift forward and be in a bunch of space in the forward line, and perhaps the Essendon ruckman. I mean, it was what the Cox and was it Wright, the other one who was
Peter Wright,
who was often in the ruck. I mean, maybe they had just decided to be more alert to that and to pay Hickey a bit more respect. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So. All right, and the other players there, we have Mills, Kennedy, and Franklin, and I think we can probably just say that Mills and Kennedy I mean, Mills is still quite young. It's sort of weird to think about it, but obviously Franklin is our experienced head, our captain, and he just just keeps contributing and making sure. I think it ties into your point, your key takeaway that our senior players stood up and really got us over the line. And I guess you see Kennedy as one of the main players that falls into that comment.
Yeah, for sure. He especially once the game in that sort of second half and into the final quarter, he was a really strong presence around stoppages. And he was absorbing, like we talked about that Essendon tackle pressure where they had 36 tackles or something last quarter. It was guys like him and Parker in the middle that they were really absorbing a lot of that and making sure that we could get the ball out and not let them get it forward and turn it over.
Yeah, definitely. And I had Franklin there at 1, and that was really just for the 3 goals and the fact that he's just a presence, and he's just King Bud, isn't he? So I thought I'd get. He looked amazing. He looks fit. I hope he can continue. Obviously, we'll look at the preview in the last section, but yeah, let's hope he can keep on rolling. But have you got anything else to add there before I move on, Steve?
No, that was it for me. Yeah.
Good stuff, mate. All right. I'm going to give a quick fantasy update now. I forgot to talk about it in the last podcast, so I'll just quickly say that Sam Wick scored 124 fantasy points at the end of the Tigers game, but he currently is not on the team, so we didn't get access to that delicious ton. Anyway, Jake Lloyd bounced back for a fantastic 119 against the Tigers as well, and obviously Goulden and Warner are just like going crazy. All right, our top 3 against the Bombers, it sort of reflects in our 5-4-3-2-1. Luke Parker scored 126, Jake Lloyd 103, and Warner 95. The pros are Parker keeps getting it done. Lloyd backed up another week after another ton, and Warner almost got the ton and would have done so if he scored a goal, but didn't really matter because he's doing so well and he just has so much value there. The cons was obviously Heaney was subbed out with the hand injury in the second quarter, which is unfortunate because he had made an incredible start through a quarter and a half. He was already on 45 points, but I think he's going to be out for a month, they're saying. So I think what we're going to have to do is just do a clean trade. We'll trade out Heaney and bring in Wicks. So that'll be a straight swap, I think. I'll just have to look at the cash. But yeah, that's a AFL fantasy update. Steve, we're going to move on to a new section here. We're going to briefly touch upon match fines. Obviously, we hadn't had any to date, but there were 3 in the game against the Bombers. So do you want to just give us a breakdown or summary of what happened and what the value of those fines were?
Sure. The first one was Callum Mills. Honestly, I wasn't even aware of this until after the game when I saw the match review officer report that this had even happened. Careless contact with an umpire. With an early plea, he got $1,000 fine. That was that one. Nick Blakey got cited for rough conduct on Zach Merritt. He sort of shouldered him kind of in the side, in the back. So it was considered careless conduct, low impact, body contact. And with an early plea, he gets a $2,000 fine. And then the final one was Kyle Langford from the Bombers. It was in the second quarter. He did he threw Chad Warner to the ground in a kind of like a quite dangerous tackle. This one, which I found interesting, was classified more or less the same as the Nick Blakey one. $3,000 first offence, but $2,000 fine with an early guilty plea. And looking at the two of them, I felt that the Langford one was far more potentially dangerous than the Blakey one. And if it had just been a little bit of bad luck, I mean, Warner could have been quite seriously hurt. And he probably would have got several weeks suspension. So, yeah, that was the one of the 3, which was a bit for me. I don't know. How did you see those ones, Matt?
Yeah, Callum Mills. I mean, I know all these players are on pretty good wickets, but $1,000 fine for the ump accidentally basically run. I mean, Mills went with his player, so it was unavoidable. But $1,000 for that seems a bit rough. But I guess they've got a system in place. But Nick Blakey one, look, it looked a little bit bad, but I also think Merritt probably, not milked it, but like played the play well. But yeah, you could hear the commentator, I think Joe Watson, saying, "Oh God, if Blakey put that hit on Merritt and Merritt got fined last year for doing the same thing on Silvani, then surely Blakey's going to do it as well." So sometimes I wonder if people are just if people watching the game are alerted to the fact by the commentators, and then it becomes this focal point. But anyway, Joe Watson obviously is a legend of the Essendon Football Club. Yeah, I don't know how good he is at commentating, but I won't go into that. I don't want to interpretate things incorrectly there, Steve. But
Oh no,
that's a bit rough. But look, the Kyle Langford one was definitely the worst. Definitely the worst. That could have been very, very messy. Nick Blakey, there was something there, but I don't know if it was worth the same value as the Langford tackle. So we're just lucky that Warner wasn't concussed. So, well, hopefully he's not concussed, but we'll have to keep following that. All right. So if that's that, we'll move on to AFL Hot Topics. And today, Stevo, we're going to talk about very quickly the rolling schedule and the impact that's having. And also where you are going to give us an update on the AFLW finals. So why don't I pass over to you, mate?
This rolling schedule, I guess, and for those listening who don't know what we mean, it's this thing that the AFL is doing now, which I think every 6 weeks or so, they're releasing the times and dates and locations of the upcoming games. So we still know every week who you're going to play in a given round, but you don't know if it's going to be on, Friday or Sunday or, lunchtime or nighttime or any of that stuff. And it's all getting released on relatively short notice. And that's what they were doing last year with the COVID for obvious reasons, because of the hub situation and all the uncertainty. I guess now it's settling down a bit, but because we still do have this practice of state border closures coming very fast, often with limited notice, I guess they've kept it to maintain some flexibility. I don't know. I think it's good for the TV networks, but probably not so good for the fans. You can probably tell us not. I mean, you're a supporter going to games and trying to make trips to games. How is it for you?
Well, it's a pain in the bum. Look, and I'm only saying that now because we're sort of a little bit further out of the woods with the COVID stuff, but I'm trying to plan life events, a couple of months out, and it's coming down to, okay, well, I can see we've got a game against this team. And we're the third last team listed, so we're probably going to play on a Sunday, but if the Swans keep playing well, are they going to put us in the blockbuster, the prime time slot? So it's kind of, it's an inconvenience. It's a bit of a first world problem, but it's a little bit logistically difficult to manage when you're a keen supporter trying to go to the games and also managing things in your private life as I should be. And let me just say that is priority. Swans, my priority is my family.
We've got that on the record. Okay, good.
Yes. Yeah. Swans are close second, but when the family's not listening, I might say, no, I'm just kidding. Family, obviously, number one. But look, I understand the reasoning behind it, but I think as you've commented, I think the AFL is benefiting from it, and it is good. I guess conceptually it's good because you can sort of take the 2 or the 4 best teams that are doing well and put them in the primetime slots, and then that obviously is going to have a positive effect on your advertising and your marketing. So surely that has a positive effect there. But yeah, it's a bit of annoying, a bit of an inconvenience, and it's sort of a little bit like that with AFL Fantasy. So not only do they have this rolling schedule for the games, for the fixtures, they also announce the teams 24 hours in advance, whereas previously all teams would have been announced on the Thursday night, and games playing on Sunday, they would just name an extended bench, but they'd have a fixed, the 18 players on the team would be there. And so, what's happening now is the Swans played on Thursday against the Bombers. They were announced on Wednesday, and then the team playing on Friday was announced on Thursday. Saturday is announced on Friday. Sunday is announced on Saturday. So, and then when you have Monday games, they're announced on Sunday. So it's purely an AFL fantasy thing. It's just very difficult to monitor because you've got to make sure that you check the teams every day for late changes and injuries and stuff like that. So yeah, look, I can understand it's warranted to an extent because of the ongoing pandemic, but a little bit annoying. So hopefully it doesn't have to continue for too long, or certainly not beyond next year. But fingers crossed. Obviously, hope everything works out well in the world with coronavirus. That's also a very important point to make. But Stevo, why don't you tell us about the AFLW final series. I think grand final, right?
Yeah, grand final this week. It's set to be a huge game. So the grand final is going to be on Saturday, this coming Saturday at 1:30 p.m. and it's standalone too. So there's no interference from any other AFL men's games. So it'll be a clean TV slot for anyone who wants to watch it. I'm not sure who's broadcasting. You need to check your local guides for the broadcasters, but it'll be completely uninterfered with. So it's not going to clash with anyone watching their favourite AFL men's team on Saturday. The game's at Adelaide Oval. Adelaide Oval, the Adelaide Crows finished top and they got through to the prelim into the grand final, so they earned the right to host the game. They're going to play Brisbane, which is a replay of the 2017 grand final, which the Crows won by a goal, 6 points. So it's in Adelaide. And interestingly, this is the fourth AFLW Grand Final, and it's the third time it's being hosted outside of Melbourne. So the first one was on the Gold Coast, then it was in Melbourne at Princes Park. 2019 it was in Adelaide. 2020 it was cancelled because of the COVID stuff, and now again this will be the fourth one. So third time out of four outside of Melbourne, and no one's losing their minds. Everyone seems to think it's pretty reasonable to do this. So maybe if we can have that mindset in the women's game, it can gradually start to trickle in to the rest of the AFL. We hope. So I'll tell you who's won the last one. So 2017 Adelaide beat Brisbane in the grand final. 2018 Bulldogs beat Brisbane again. 2019 Adelaide beat Carlton. So we've got Adelaide trying to get their third premiership versus Brisbane trying to win their third grand final to make it 1 from 3.
So it's pretty tense for both sides, like trying to get the win and trying to, I guess, to get the not a three-peat, but like pretty close to it. Sounds like they're pretty formidable, the Crows.
Yeah, they've been excellent. I mean, the only one that they didn't was that 2018 one where the Bulldogs got up. 2019, it's going to be Adelaide Oval again. They had the grand final Adelaide Oval in 2019. Over 53,000 people turned up to watch it live. So hoping for another big crowd. The game itself, the Crows have got a big out. Their captain, Chelsea Randall, is out with the concussion rule. She got concussed, so she's got the mandatory 12 days, so she misses the grand final with concussion, which she's an important player for the team. And then other key players, I mean, I talked about Erin Phillips last week. Again, she's amazing. I don't think I need to keep saying how good a footballer she is. Everyone will get tired of listening, but she is. Watch her. And then from Brisbane, have a look at Ali Anderson. She plays in the middle, gets a lot of the football, uses it very well. And she's interestingly one of 7 Lions who played in both of the other 2 losing grand finals that they've had. And Ali Anderson has, in fact, since she started playing football as a 17-year-old, played in 9 grand finals for 0 wins. So this would be her chance to get 1 from 10.
It's now or never.
Or Ali, yeah. It's been a tough run for her. But I think my tip is that the Crows are going to break Brisbane hearts again and make it 3 flags in 4 years. I'm tipping Crows.
Hostile territory, Adelaide Oval, the pristine Adelaide Oval. It's going to be a cracker. And I've just found out, Steve, you can stream it live on the AFLW official app or the AFL Live official app. And if you don't have those, you can download it for free in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store. So that'll be a fantastic game, I think. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I'm excited. Should be good. They're both very good teams. They're If you haven't watched any AFLW this year, watch this game.
Absolutely, mate. So we're looking forward to you giving us the results in next week's episode. But let's move on to the next section, which is obviously the round ahead, the preview of the next game. In this section, we focus on 3 games, most importantly, the Swans' next game, and then 2 other games of interest hosted by Stevo and one by me, Noddy. After that, we're going to run through the rest of the tips for the round. So all right, the Swans game, next game. So in game 4 of round 5, it's another home game for the 3rd place Bloods, taking place next Saturday, the 17th of April at the SCG against our local rival, who posted their first win against the Pies last week in Derby 20. And that's XX for those following in ancient Rome. And they're 15th place at the moment, the Giants, after that win against the Pies. So first bounce is at 4:35 p.m. local time. Cannot wait. The Twos are actually playing at midday at tram side oval, the ground outside of the SCG that's next to the tram line. So they also play in the Giants, and they start at midday. I won't actually make that, but that'll be a fantastic day of footy if anyone's keen. So, okay, Stevo, let's look at the injuries after the Bombers game. We obviously had a couple. Who are we looking at here?
Yeah, and both big outs too, really, very big outs. Probably our best back and our best forward. Rampy with a finger, he's looking at what, 3 to 4 weeks, even something like that, I think.
Yeah, 3 to 4.
Yeah, and Heaney with a hand, something similar, 3 to 4 maybe, if he's lucky, a bit quicker. So those two are definite outs.
Just very quickly, Stevo, because we may have some Bombers fans listening. Obviously, Heaney's, I don't think, during the game, we didn't really see what happened to his hand. We just saw him go off and then Bell warming up to come on, and then obviously did come on. I don't know if you've seen this, but they've found footage from the behind the goals, that the Fox Footy guys have access to. And it was a punch off the ball on Zerk Thatcher, unfortunately. And I think that's how Heaney's injured his hand. I don't know where he connected him, but I was watching a clip on the AFL app this afternoon, and it looked like that Heaney had clipped Zerk Thatcher, and that's how he did his hand. Did you see that?
No, I wasn't actually aware of that until you said it right now. So Heaney hit the Essendon bloke and hurt his hand.
Yeah, off ball. So I think everyone's
okay. Well,
yeah, I think Bombers fans, and certainly Kane Corns was like, yeah, well, you deserved it if you're doing that. And look, I don't think Heaney's a dirty player at all. But obviously, we don't want players doing that sort of stuff, and we've spoken about that before, and we will again. But hopefully Zerk Thatcher's okay. I think he finished the game, so he was. But I don't want to say it's just desserts, but not at all. Because obviously, I don't know. It's a tough one. Sorry, that was a comment without notice, a question without notice, Stevo. But
it's interesting to hear it, and I think it's good that you brought it up because yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, that we don't want any of this off the ball hitting going on at all. And if this highlights it as another example that it continues, then it's something worth talking about, no matter what the outcome is for the Swans. I mean, obviously we want Heaney to play, but we do not want off the ball hits at all.
Yeah, look, the vision was blurry and it was very hard to see, and it looked like he did. It was probably a high chest hit, but given the blurriness, it did also look that maybe he'd made contact with the neck or jaw, but it's very hard to say. I don't know if it's been picked up in the match review office, but look, Heaney's out with his hand, and I think it's also going to be a month. So I just wanted to shout out to the Bombers fans there. Obviously, we don't want that see that as Swans fans, but we also love Heaney, and we will defend him in every other sense. So, all right. Yeah, so
we want him to play, but if he's hitting blokes, we don't approve. I think.
Still love you, Isaac. Please come back
we
soon.
do.
So Rampy finger 4 weeks, Heaney hand probably 3 to 4 weeks. Look. Form-wise, who are we looking at that could probably do with a bit of a spell, considering that the VFL is kicking off this weekend?
Oh, look, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. I think Blakey again. He was better against Richmond, but I don't know. He looks like he's not quite up to the pace of it at the moment, and he's still trying to do maybe a bit too much with the ball when he gets it. Sometimes kind of rushing decisions a little bit, like that one in the final quarter, if you remember, where he was streaming into the forward 50 and he either needed to take like a long running shot at goal from a not great angle, or lower his eyes a bit and try and hit up a forward target. But instead, he just kind of sprayed it and it dribbled out of bounds. That sort of stuff where his decisions are a bit off. I reckon he might have a game at Tram Park or Tramway Park or whatever it's called on the weekend.
I'll figure out what that's called. Yeah. But I mean, okay. So if we're looking at, or we're definitely looking at Heaney and Rampy out, potentially Blakey based on form. Does Lance Franklin stay in, given that it's in Sydney?
I guess.
And he looked okay.
Yeah, he looked like he was. I mean, he played the whole game out. He and Longmire talking constantly through the last couple of weeks has been very consistent that they plan to play Franklin, unless they have a good reason not to. So we don't know what's going on with him, but yeah, he looked like he'd be able to play again this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he's fit and he's good to go, and we're in Sydney and he's still around the family, then surely But that said, as we've been very open, McLean can come in and play that role. But it's just a matter of, I guess, how he's looking, isn't it?
Yeah,
I guess they'll figure that out during the week.
It's at the
But
SCG. I mean, he seems to be playing all the SCG games at the moment, so maybe he takes a break for the Gold Coast the week after.
yeah, Lakeside Oval. Okay, so
yeah, it's that one.
Oval.
Like when you come in from Central Station side, when you come up the hill, and there's that big field just outside the SCG on Driver Avenue. It's that field, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to have to double check this because I'm checking on the Swans app. It says Lakeside. Obviously, they're going to get that right, but I thought I'd read somewhere it was
because there's that Kipax Lake that I don't know if it's a real and artificial lake, but that little Kipax Lake which is there. So I guess that's the lake that it's beside.
I'd always wondered if that was a throwback to the lake. Is it Albert Lake? I'm probably getting this wrong. No, Lake Oval or Lake Park.
Yeah, it was called something like that. Either Lake Oval or maybe it was even called Lakeside Oval. I can't remember. Yeah, I mean, I never went there. Right. But it was before my time. But
terrible Swans fans will obviously have to fact check.
You need to ask your friend. She would have been an old South Melbourne fan. The friend you met at the game, she'd know.
Oh, exactly. I'll just I've got Marita on speed dial now, so
yeah.
I'll ask Marita and Bob and say, hey, what was this? Where did the Swans used to play? They could definitely tell me. But
we could Google it, but it's much more fun to do it that way, I think.
Yes, we're referencing back. Okay, so Heaney out, Rampy out, potentially Blakey, probably Franklin in. Who comes in?
I don't know. And with the Blakey out, I'm not saying he's playing terribly. I'm just saying that because we've got a lot of people on the fringes who are pushing for spots, that it becomes very, very tight. So if you're not completely spot on every week, then you might get dropped. And I don't think Blakey would get dropped if there weren't guys breathing down his neck. But all the reports keep saying that Stevens and Hayward are constantly putting their hands up in practice games. So, if one of them is deserving of a spot, then I think Blakey would be the one to step aside.
Yeah, and look, it is a tough call, and we're being. There is a tramway oval, so I'm not wrong. It's a park in Moore Park. Sorry, Steve, I'm doing two things at once here. Look, if he stays in, chances are he'll have a good, solid game like he did against the Tigers. But I think he could do potentially with a week off to get some form again, because we all know he's a gun player and he's going to be a gun player for a long time for the Bloods, and we're looking forward to that. I think you mentioned McDonald maybe up for a rest soon. What do you think about that?
I just thought he looked a little bit like maybe mentally tired in the last game, but then he's had a 9-day break since then, so surely he'd be all right as long as he's feeling mentally good. My guess with him is that they'll probably, if they're going to rest him, they'll do it after the Fremantle game in a few weeks' time. Maybe it's in 3 or 4 weeks, I can't remember. And because he's from Perth, maybe they'll just leave him over in Perth for a few days afterwards and give him a rest then, would be my guess, but that's just a guess.
Okay, so I think they've said Rowie is fit and good to go. If Rampy's out, surely that's Melican, who by all accounts had a good practice match against the Giants. And then if we need someone to cover the role of Heaney, then Hayward, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. He plays that. I mean, he's capable of playing that sort of role.
And then, sorry if you've already said this, and then if Blakey's out, then maybe someone like Dylan Stevens comes in. Have we gone that far?
We'd be out. So if we had Rampy out, Melican in, Heaney definitely out, Hayward in, and then Blakey out, Rowbottom. So we'd be 3 out, 3 in. So the ins would be Melican, Hayward, I guess, and then Stevens. Maybe misses out again.
Sure. Which is, he's a great player, and I'm hoping he can break back into the fold. But yeah, there's just that much competition at the moment. So a good problem to have as a Blood fan, but tough for the guys, and hope they're all working through it and working together as a team. Obviously. All right. So this next section, which Swan flies high? This is we've discovered that we're wondering if we should just can this, because every player we predict to play well ends up having a bit of an average game. But who do you think might fly high, Stevo, against the Giants?
Yeah, because we started this 2 weeks ago before the Richmond game, and we said Buddy didn't play, and then we said McDonald didn't have his best day. So
0-0. Yeah.
I'm going to put the absolute moz on poor Errol Goulden and say that he's been really, really good the last couple of weeks, and he just hasn't quite put in a 4-quarter performance yet. And last week his finishing was a bit off, like we talked about before. I think this week it's all going to click. He's going to play 4 quarters. He's going to nail his shots. He's going to tear it up.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I really hope that does come to pass. But my prediction for Swanee, who flies high, I'm going to go with Juzzy McInerney. He obviously had a pretty good game against the Bombers, kicked those 2 goals. I think he's going to be a bit more active. He's going to get 20 disposals and he's going to kick 3 goals. I just love him. You love to. He's such an exciting player, and you love the players who you can see that it means a lot to them. You know, when he pumps his arms and it's like, "Let's go, boys!" Just love to see it. And so yeah, I'm predicting a big run from Juzzy. But that said, if we by this time next week, if we come back and Goulden and McInerney have been flat, we're just going to can this section.
Yep, I agree. Finished.
Yeah, we'll just get rid of it because it's just too much bad mojo. All right, so we'll have to make a note of that and come back to that. All right, in terms of the Giants, who do we need to be wary of? Obviously, they're a team stacked with talent still, even though they've had a bit of a rough start to the year. Who are their bogey, their danger players?
There are 2 for me. One, Toby Green. He's been very dominant the last couple of weeks. He kicked 5 last week. I think he got 5 the week before. I think 3 the week before that. If we can minimise his impact forward of 50. And then the other one is Hopper. He's very, very strong at the stoppages. We saw that in our breakdown of the preseason game against the Giants. If you go back a few weeks, he's got a very, very strong influence at the stoppages. Without all of his support around him, maybe his influence is, with some of their injuries, maybe his influence is not so much, but still he's one to keep a strong eye on.
Definitely, he's so dangerous there at the stoppages. I've got about 3 or 4 of the Giants who I think we really need to look out for, and that's Timmy Taranto. He's getting back to his pre-shoulder level of ability, and that's a scary thing because he was on track for superstardom. And look, his past 2 weeks, he's been building, but his past 2 weeks have been very, very good. So I think we need to just keep him in the back of our mind. Bobby Hill, obviously X factor, continues to look more and more dangerous, and actually continues to look quite composed. So he's got a very dangerous pass, and he's been doing some punishing inside 50s. The other area is ruck. Obviously, they gave Flynn a rest last week and brought ex-Swanee or ex-Cat and ex-Swanee Shane Mummy in. So I don't know if they're going to bring Flynn back in or they're going to keep Mummy and then maybe ruck together. But if that's the case, then Hickey's definitely going to need a lot of help from Reed, because Mummy's one of those ruckmen that really lets you know that he's there with his barrel chest and his rugby tackling. So I think they're the players, for my mind, that we need to look out for. Obviously, there's a stack of other players. Tom Green, who I think we'll probably talk about every other week, and how we wish that he'd come to the Swans at some point. But yeah. How do we get the win, Stevo? I'm a bit worried about this game. They obviously beat the Pies. We both picked the Pies. They smashed the Pies effectively. So was that game the turning point for them? Is it just going to click again?
I watched the second half of that Collingwood Giants game. I turned it on. The Giants looked pretty good, really, and they had a very, very young team. And Collingwood, to be keeping it all in context, weren't particularly impressive either. But I think if we can keep the game on our terms and play the same style that's been successful, I mean, they're going to throw pressure at us for sure. We need to match that pressure and make sure we use the ball better and hope for some better finishing than this week. And I think that should be enough for the Swans to get the win.
Yeah, they're my points exactly. Try to increase the disposal efficiency back up to that 75-76% range. Then maybe get a few more uncontested touches and then kick straight and get more goals than behinds. It's pretty simple, but easier said than done. Obviously, we're looking at the form line, and obviously we are 4-0. We've got 4 W's in a row. It looks beautiful on the page. The Giants are loss, win. So that's the recent form. In terms of the past 3 years of games against the Giants, been a bit of an up and down. So 2018. The Swans beat the Giants, and then the Giants beat the Swans, and then there was three games in a row between 2018 and end of 2019 where the Giants beat us, and then we beat them last year at Optus Stadium in a coronavirus world, so which was one of our best games of the year last year. So it's a bit hard to look back at recent games and try and predict a trend, but it's who are you going to tip, Stevo?
Swans for me.
Swans. All right, I'm going to go Swans.
With a fair bit of confidence, I think.
More confidence. Fair bit of confidence. Okay.
Last week, yeah, I'm more confident this one than I was against Essendon, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess just having seen against the Bombers and other teams may start to play that style against us like the Bombers did, but whether or not they can keep that pressure up, we'll yet to see. But yeah, I'll pick the Swans as well, but I'm not confident. I guess I'm never really confident, but I'll pick the Swans.
Except for when you picked them to beat Richmond at the MCG 2 weeks ago.
That was just ballsy, mate. I was just trying to peg back a tip, mate. So
it
no,
worked.
but look, yeah, I think you said I'm equal or ahead.
I think you're ahead. We'll get to when we get to the tips. I think you're actually ahead.
It's all conjecture at this point. Hey, mate, if a group of swans is called a bevy, then what is a group of giants called?
Yes, I've done some research on this. This is my task for the week. A percussion of giants, according to the internet. I guess because it makes a big drum sounding noise when they walk or something. I don't know.
The big sound from the west or something.
Yeah, maybe
like
that's a percussion of
song from the Gulags. Yeah, like a Russian percussion of Western Sydney sounding music.
I quite like their song actually. I think there's a lot of good songs in the AFL. Yeah, there's some good ones and some really good ones. But yeah, I like theirs.
I think probably the Swans is the best, mate. But yeah, again, I'm very biased. Yeah. Hey, last week we neglected to let the listeners know what the collective noun for a group of bombers is. So can you just fill me in on that one too?
Yes, just in case anyone's keeping track of this and hasn't decided to just look it up for themselves. A squadron of bombers, which is kind of boring, really. So we didn't miss much by leaving that one out.
Yeah, right. Squadron of bombers. Gotcha.
The bomber squadron. I think they even call themselves the squadron. The cheer squad of the bombers is called the squadron. I think. I can't remember.
Oh, that works out. And then there's the hangar as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's see how long they can stretch that metaphor.
Yeah, well, I think they've covered it quite well in their marketing department. All right. I think we're going to look at two games now, our highlight games or game of interest. And I'm going to kick off because it's the first game of the round, and that is 11th place Saints against 8th place Tigers at Marvel on Thursday night. Look, in terms of ins and outs, neither side reported injuries after the last round. Since then, Rowan Marshall's actually pulled up ginger from his foot injury. I think it's plantar fasciitis. I think I'm saying that right. My brother had it. He said it was very, very painful, but obviously a different game. But yeah, I think Rowan Marshall's a big out, obviously, because he's one of their key targets up front and obviously main ruck. But I think Carlisle and or McKernan will obviously fill the void. In terms of the Tigers, they didn't have anyone injured, but yeah, I think Dimmer's not afraid to throw the magnets around, so they're probably going to mix it up again. In terms of recent form, the Saints win, loss, win, and the Tigers are win, loss, and one of those L's is from the Swans. Key players I've got for the Saints: Crouch, Steele, King, and Butler. For the Tigers, obviously Dusty, Jaden Short, Lynch, and Bolton. I actually really love Bolton as a player. I think he's going to get better and better. I chose this match, I think, because obviously the Saints bounced back after the Bombers thrashing and really needed to. And they came back with a really good win against the Eagles and Marvel. So obviously the Eagles are touted as I'd say top four or six, definitely a final 8 team this year. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if the Tigers can put those two pretty big losses, one to Sydney and then obviously last week to Port, by a couple of points behind them, and try and get the job done against the Saints. But with that in mind, I think I've got to back in the Tigers. I know Marvel is basically a home game for the Saints, but it's still in Melbourne, so they're going to have a lot of Tigers there in support. So they really just have to win. And I think they've got to win ugly if need be. And they need to do so to get their season back on track. It's obviously not panic stations, but I think for a team and a club and a supporter base like Richmond, who are very proud and have had a lot of success over the past 3-4 years, it's really important to get back on track. So they were very close against Port. Obviously, it was a fantastic game. So Port are a top 2 contender. So you would say that the Tigers get the win there, I think. Yeah. Steve, do you have a pick on those?
I think I agree. Yeah, Tigers
Tigers. All right, make note of that. All right, well, let's pass over to your game of the round.
Okay, so I'm going to look at Brisbane versus Essendon up in the Gabba. Brisbane sitting 16th on the ladder, Essendon's 12th. So both teams are 1 and 3. It's just percentage that's separating them. They both had the one win. I picked this one. This is an interesting one, this game, because it's a team that I guess is a bit behind where we expected they might be now with Brisbane. I don't think we expected Brisbane to be 1 and 3. Certainly their loss to the Swans was a shock loss. And then a team that's caused a few surprises. I mean, okay, Essendon's only won one match, but it was against a likely or a potential finalist, and then they've pushed Sydney, who have been the form team, to within 3 points at their home ground. So, yeah, it's an interesting clash. So Saturday night, 7:25 at the Gabba. No injuries. Neither side reported any real injuries. I think McStay is a possibility to come back in for Brisbane, coming back off an injury layoff, but nothing confirmed yet. We'll know on Thursday or Friday when the teams come out. Recent form is both the same. Lions have gone loss, win-loss, and Bombers have done the same thing. But I think it's interesting to look at who they've lost to. So Brisbane have lost to Sydney, which we know. Geelong by a point, very controversial circumstances. They probably would have had claims to say they deserved a free kick, and the AFL even said they should have got that free kick in front of goal at the end. So that was a very close one against Geelong, which is last year's grand finalist, and the Bulldogs, who is predicted by many to be a top 2 team this year. So none of those losses have been shameful, really, given Sydney's sustained form. And then they beat Collingwood. Essendon lost to the Hawks after giving up a massive lead, 40-something points. They were thrashed by Port. They belted a very disappointing St Kilda. Essendon played well, but St Kilda were poor. And then they pushed Sydney to play 4 quarters for the first time this year by any team, including last year's premiers. So I think Brisbane's form line to me is a bit stronger. Key players, Brisbane, I think the forwards for me, Danaher, Hipwood and Cameron haven't clicked yet as a trio, and I think they need to find a way to click and get the best out of all 3 of those players. It's been a bit, they haven't gelled. Some of them, I've watched Brisbane quite a bit this year, and they haven't really got the chemistry yet between those 3 key forwards or important forwards. And then Essendon, Merritt and Parrish in the middle. Brisbane want to make sure that whatever dominance they have around the ball is minimised, and Ridley in the back line, if he can keep playing at his best, then he can really start to expose Brisbane coming out of the back half. I think Brisbane is going to win because they need to win to prove that they're contenders this year. I think if they drop this game, a lot of questions are going to start coming on their credibility as a contender this year. Essendon will give them a good run, I think, just like they did with the Swans. But I think that Brisbane's got some really, strong, experienced players, and I think they'll be the difference against a fairly raw, if promising, Essendon team who's actually on the road now for the 2nd week in a row. So for that, I'm saying Brisbane.
Man, I was going to go the Bombers, but that was a really good summary. Like, I think you've made me change my mind, Steve. I think I'm going to go to the Lions now. This was not planned. Like, I'd actually planned to say I'm going to go the Bombers, but having listened to you now,
we actually did. Yeah, to be fair, he's not making this up. This isn't gamesmanship on the tipping comp. We actually pre-entered our tips, and his pre-entered tip was Essendon.
I had no idea you were going to give that such a good. Okay, so you fully convinced me here. Okay, the other thing is Danaher. Are the Bombers going to target him as an ex-Don?
I don't know.
There's all this talk about having a go at ex-players and stuff, but
I think Ben Rutten as a coach is a coach that I've got a lot of respect for, and I think that he'll want to beat them on the field. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got to change to the Lions, mate. I'm gonna change to the Lions. Sorry, you've made so many good points there. You've got me.
You're welcome. No, it's good to
kicking myself if the Bombers get up. I should.
This is all on you if they get up. You can't blame anyone else but yourself.
All right, mate. Yeah,
anyway, should we do the other tips?
Yeah, I'll do the other tips. I'll quickly run through the rest of the games. So obviously, Saints and Tigers game 1, we've both called the Tigers. Game 2 is 6th placed Eagles versus 14th placed Magpies at Optus Stadium on Friday night. I'm going the Eagles, mate.
Yep, Eagles.
Okay. Game 3, you've got 1st place Dogs versus the 13th placed Suns at Marvel on Saturday afternoon. Dogs.
Yeah, Dogs for sure.
Looking too good. Game 4, obviously, we've looked at the Swans and the Giants, and we've both gone the Swannies. Game 5, we've got 7th place Blues versus 4th place Power at the MCG on Saturday night. I'm going to go Port here, mate.
Yeah, me too, Port.
Game 6, we've got the Lions of the Bombers, as we've just spoken on, and I've backflipped. We're both going to go Lions here. Unbelievable. Game 7, got 5th place Crows versus 9th place Dockers at Adelaide Oval on Sunday afternoon. Got to go the Crows here.
Yep, I'm agreeing again. I'm on the Crows.
Look at that. Game 8, 17th placed Hawks versus 2nd place Demons at the MCG on Sunday afternoon, twilight. I've got to go the D's. They're looking fantastic.
Yep, I agree again.
D's, okay. Game 9, 10th place Cats versus 18th place Roos at GMHBA Park Cardinia, Geelong, on Sunday afternoon, twilight, and also the Cats.
Yeah, I think the Cats have they've got North at a good time because they've been looking a bit shaky, Geelong, and it's a good time for them to get a game against North Melbourne. So yeah, Cats.
Although that said, the Roos were beating the Crows right up until the beginning of fourth quarter. So yeah, who knows? I mean, you couldn't think that the Roos would beat the Cats in Geelong, surely.
Nah, I'm tipping Geelong for this one.
All right, Stevo. Thanks for your tips. Thanks for your time. That brings us to the end of this episode. On behalf of the Bevy, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. We look forward to you joining us next time, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for updates and tidbits. Until then, up the Bloods and can the Swans.